Let's start now. Human scale. To your eyes, only a few meters separate you from the walls around you. A few steps are enough to cross a room, and a short walk calmly takes you down the block. At this fundamental level, distance feels natural, predictable, and deeply comfortable. You measure space with the rhythm of your own body and understand it through physical movement. A kilometer is a unit you can visualize clearly. You know the effort required to cross it and the sensation of walking it. Even when the numbers increase, 10 or 100 kilometers, they still remain within your practical mental reach. A city can be crossed in hours, a country in days, and an entire continent in a single commercial flight. Everything still fits perfectly within a human scale of proportion. You compare distance with time invested and energy spent, thinking about how long something will take, not how far it truly is. But this perception depends entirely on fixed reference points. Roads, buildings, and the horizon give your brain a solid base for measurement. Remove those anchors, and your spatial understanding begins to collapse rapidly. The moment you leave solid ground, the illusion of distance begins to fragment. Your brain desperately searches for something to hold on to, and when it encounters emptiness, distance becomes purely abstract. Something you can calculate with formulas, but can no longer feel or intuitively understand. What comes next will completely break that sense of control. Right now, everything you think is far still makes sense. But in the next level, that idea is going to completely collapse. Planetary scale Earth, when seen from the ground, feels truly colossal. With a diameter of approximately 12,742 kilometers, it holds deep oceans, vast continents, mountain ranges, and billions of complex lives. Traveling across its surface requires significant time, logistical effort, and careful planning. For someone standing on it, the planet feels infinite and inexhaustible. You could dedicate your entire life to exploring it and still die without having seen even a fraction of what exists. However, from the perspective of space, that perception changes drastically. Observed from a stable orbit, Earth reveals itself as a sphere, finite, contained, and surrounded by absolute darkness. Just 400 kilometers above the surface, astronauts circle the entire globe in only 90 minutes. What once felt vast now seems small and limited. The atmosphere becomes a thin blue line, visibly fragile. Massive storms shrink into static patterns. Cities disappear, and political borders vanish completely. Everything that once seemed monumental loses its scale of importance. Then something unsettling happens. You realize that everything you have ever known, loved, or hated exists in a place that fits entirely within your field of view. Imagine holding your entire world in a single glance. At this level, Earth is no longer a sovereign world. It is just a physical object, suspended in the vacuum, fragile and alone. And if Earth feels small now, wait until you see the next step. Earth to Moon. The Moon often appears close, almost within reach on a clear night. It dominates the night sky, bright, familiar, and constant. But the real distance between us tells a completely different story from what our eyes suggest. On average, it lies 384,400 kilometers away from our surface. This gap is so vast that you could perfectly line up 30 Earths between the two celestial bodies. Light takes just over 1 second to cross this immense void, but for humans, the journey is exhausting. It took days of continuous travel for astronauts to complete it. As they moved away, Earth began to shrink behind them relentlessly. Slowly at first, then with alarming speed, transforming from a massive sphere into a distant point in the darkness. At that exact moment, something fundamental shifts in the human mind. There is no longer the comforting sense of home beneath your feet. There is no solid ground, no north or south, no scale for comparison. There is only pure, raw distance. You are suspended between two worlds, and both feel terrifyingly far away. Silence becomes absolute, and space gains a real physical presence. This is where distance stops being something you experience and becomes something you passively observe. It is no longer physical, it becomes psychological. For the first time, you truly understand how isolated Earth is within the void. The solar system. Now distance expands beyond any measurement in kilometers that makes sense to the human brain. The numbers become too large, impractical, and unreal. That is why a new unit is adopted, the astronomical unit, AU. 1 AU represents the average distance between Earth and the Sun, about 150 million kilometers. This becomes the new fundamental reference point. Earth sits at 1 astronomical unit from the Sun, Mars at about 1.5, Jupiter at more than 5, and Neptune at a distant 30 units. But these cold numbers still fail to capture the loneliness of reality. The solar system is not compact as school diagrams suggest. It is composed almost entirely of absolute emptiness. If Earth were reduced to the size of a grain of sand, Neptune would be hundreds of meters away, and between them there would be absolutely nothing. No sound, no resistance, just vacuum. Even light takes hours to cross the solar system. Sunlight takes 8 minutes to reach Earth, meaning every ray you see now already belongs to the past. As you move outward, the sun shrinks and weakens. It stops dominating the sky and becomes just another cold point of light. Beyond Neptune lies the Kuiper Belt, and far beyond, the Oort cloud, stretching across tens of thousands of astronomical units. At this level, the solar system is not an organized system. It is a vast vacuum with small objects drifting aimlessly. What lies beyond is even harder to conceive. And here's the unsettling part. We're still not even close to understanding how big space really is. Interstellar space. Leaving the boundaries of the solar system changes all the rules of perception again. Now, even astronomical units become too small to describe the immensity. So we shift to light years. A light year is the immense distance light travels in a single year, about 9.46 trillion kilometers. The nearest star system is 4.37 light years away. It may not seem extreme at first, but it is completely unreachable with current technology. Even our fastest spacecraft would take tens of thousands of years to get there. Reflect on that for a moment. Entire civilizations could rise, flourish, and collapse on Earth before a single interstellar journey is completed. At this level, distance is no longer something you cross. It becomes a barrier that separates worlds permanently. Between stars, there is virtually nothing. No air, no sound, no visible structure, only deep darkness and separation. If you were placed in the void between stars, you would lose any sense of direction. You would see only faint points of light, incredibly distant from each other. Stars are not close neighbors. They only appear clustered from Earth's limited perspective. In reality, they are isolated beyond human comprehension, separated by voids that redefine the very concept of nothingness. The Milky Way. Now we pull our perspective back even further. Individual stars begin to form a larger, organized structure, the Milky Way galaxy. This is a massive spiral system containing hundreds of billions of stars and planetary systems. Its total diameter stretches across about 100,000 light-years from one end to the other. Our solar system is located in a peripheral arm, far from the bright central core, approximately 26,000 light-years away from the galactic center. At this level of magnitude, our sun becomes completely insignificant, just another anonymous star among billions of others. If you could travel at the maximum speed allowed in the universe, the speed of light, it would still take 100,000 years to cross the galaxy, and even in that scenario, everything would be in constant motion. Stars orbit the center in a slow, endless dance. Entire systems continuously shift positions. Nothing remains static. At this scale, size becomes psychologically overwhelming. The idea of crossing the galaxy ceases to be a physical journey and becomes something impossible to fully experience for any biological being. You are no longer thinking in terms of linear distance. You are confronting the scale of existence itself. And yet even this colossal structure is not unique or special in the cosmos. Intergalactic distance. Beyond the boundaries of the Milky Way lies something even more vast, other independent galaxies. The nearest large neighboring galaxy, Andromeda, is located about 2.5 million light-years away from us. The light you observe from it today began its journey when early human ancestors were still walking the Earth. You are not seeing it as it exists now, but as it was millions of years ago. In the abyss between galaxies, space becomes even more extreme and desolate. Distances stretch so far that galaxies appear like isolated islands in an infinite dark ocean. Even when they move toward one another, the process of approach takes billions of years to unfold. And when they finally meet, they do not collide violently like solid objects. Instead, they pass through one another almost without interaction because the space between the stars within them is so vast that direct collisions are extraordinarily rare. At this level, emptiness dominates absolutely everything that exists, not because there are no objects, but because every point of matter is separated by unimaginable and silent distance. It is here that scale truly begins to break all limits of human imagination and logic. Cosmic structures. Galaxies are not simply scattered randomly across the void. They organize themselves into groups, clusters, and massive superclusters. These structures are connected through vast filaments of dark matter and gas, forming what scientists call the cosmic web. It is a massive network that stretches across the entire known universe. Between these filaments lie enormous voids, regions spanning billions of light years where almost nothing exists. If you could zoom out far enough to observe the whole structure, the universe would resemble a neural network, similar to the architecture of a brain or a complex biological system. At this scale, the universe reveals itself as structured and coherent. It is not chaotic but governed by fundamental laws. Patterns emerge across distances that challenge any attempt at simple measurement. Gravity acts as the binding force that connects everything, even across millions of light years of separation, and yet, even this vast and all-encompassing network is only a small fraction of a greater whole, one that remains hidden beyond our ability to observe. The observable universe. What you're about to see is so large, your brain won't be able to fully process it. But once you do, you won't see reality the same way again. We now reach the largest scale human perception can grasp, the observable universe. This includes everything whose light has had enough time to reach us since the beginning of existence. Its estimated diameter is about 93 billion light-years. Within this vast sphere, there are approximately 2 trillion galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars. At this level, numbers lose all practical meaning. You can pronounce them, but you cannot truly process them. This scale lies completely beyond human sensory experience. And there is one final detail that changes everything. The farther you look into space, the further back in time you see. Because light takes immense periods to travel, observing distant galaxies means looking directly into the deep past. At the edge of the observable universe, we detect the remaining light from the earliest moments after the Big Bang. You are no longer just observing three-dimensional space, you are observing the timeline of existence itself. And beyond this physical limit, there may be much more. Perhaps an infinity we will never be able to detect or understand. From a few everyday meters to billions of light years, each level of distance reshapes our perception of reality. What once felt large becomes insignificant. What seemed distant becomes a tiny neighborhood. Earth is small. The solar system is just a point. Even galaxies are subtle when compared to the totality of the universe. And yet, within all of this overwhelming vastness, conscious existence emerges. Not at the center of everything, not in a place of special importance, but in a common corner of a perfectly ordinary galaxy. It is a persistent reminder that the universe is not only immense in size, but exists far beyond anything we were biologically designed to fully understand.